For more on the situation in Egypt, I'm joined by Emilio Viano. He's a professor in the Department of Justice, Law, and Society at American University here in Washington, D.C. Welcome back to the show. You know, we just heard from Turkish Prime Minister Erdogan take the international community to task for a lack of action, in his words. But isn't that a little bit hypocritical considering the situation in his own country just several weeks ago?
Sure, naturally. If we think about what happened in Ankara and Istanbul particularly, we can see that there are strong similarities between the two events.
Because he was on the other side of the crackdown,
of course,
in his country.
Naturally. And no doubt the United States are in a no-win situation. The Muslim Brotherhood won the election and won the election democratically. So one should support them. But on the other hand, the U.S. has had a long relationship with the military, and the military are needed for the stability of the country, for controlling the Gaza Strip in Israel, if necessary, let's say by closing the border so that weapons are not smuggled into the Gaza Strip, and for stability in the region in general, and most of all for fighting against Al-Qaeda terrorism. And also, let's not forget, for ensuring that the Suez Canal functions properly, because it is a vital waterway for Europe and also for the United States.
So should it cut off aid?
I think that would be symbolically important, certainly, but it would create a problem with the military. Also, it would not have much of an effect, because we already know that Saudi Arabia, Qatar, other countries are offering $12 billion. So the $1 billion of the U.S. is not very much to make an impression. So it becomes more of a symbolic measure that might send a message of serious displeasure. The cancellation of the joint maneuvers is something very weak and purely symbolic. It would be more important if they were to cancel next month counterterrorism joint exercises, and I don't think they will.
Well, we should, as you point out, look ahead to that, because for now, with this sort of inaction on the U.S.'s part, it appears that they're, I don't want to say condoning the actions of a military when it would not do certainly anything like that in its own country.
Well, the problem is that they waited too long. If they had called the coup a coup very quickly, they would have established at least a credibility of the U.S. backing a group that had won the election democratically. They waited, they vacillated, and so now it's very hard to choose where to go.
Professor Viano, I want you to turn your attention to the monitor right now. We're looking at live pictures of this mosque in Cairo, where the attention has been centered around for the last several hours, with reports of security forces surrounding this mosque with supporters inside it. It seems to be somewhat of a standoff, if you will. We're waiting to see how this all ends.
Well, certainly, and there is no doubt that the military are determined to have the upper end. But this is not going to be easy, because the Brotherhood is quite strong, of course. The problem in Egypt has been the lack of dialogue. The Brotherhood and Morsi forgot that, yes, they won the election, but they could not govern without taking into account the other half of the country that didn't vote for them. The liberals and the more advanced people in the country, let's say, shouldn't forget that, yes, they are very modern, but they are not the majority. So they should have talked to each other, but they didn't.
But at this point, neither side is backing down. Everyone's determined to keep pushing and pushing with more protests. We saw reports today of the military using helicopters against the protesters. Where does it go now? I mean, is it just, do they keep upping the ante?
I think that there is obviously an exploitation, and maybe a cynical exploitation, on the part of both the Brotherhood and the army of the situation for their own proper goals. Let's not forget that the army is the most powerful institution in Egypt, has practically governed the country in the last 40, 50 years. So they are not about to give up their power. And the Brotherhood, of course, wants it. And so it is really basically going to go into a civil war type of situation.
All right, Emilio Viano, as always, we appreciate your time and your insight. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.